independence. Many of the 43 million Americans with physical disabilities have jobs, live on their own, even get married. Which is all fine and good, it seems, until they decide to have children. Because you see, no matter how loving and caring they may be, not everyone is sure the disabled are capable parents. Jay Shadler begins with one couple struggling to prove their doubters wrong. Thanks to voice synthesizers, their words are loud and clear.
Love sounds the same, even when its voice has to be made by a computer. She is perfectly healthy. They are severely disabled. But together, Lee, Bill, and Natalie are a family.
I had not planned to become pregnant, but when I found out, I began planning for the life which was growing inside of me.
When I found out that Lee was pregnant, I was scared and overjoyed.
Bill and Lee have been disabled all their lives. Their cerebral palsy is not hereditary. Triggered by a lack of oxygen at birth, CP struck their bodies and their speech, but not their minds or their hearts.
We met in 1978. She was Miss Goody Two-Shoes, and I was the rebel.
I asked him out on a date to the mall.
You asked Bill out?
From then on, I knew that Bill was it.
Why did you want a child?
Why did we want a child? Why does anyone want a child? It is a part of life.
When she is on my tummy and I can thumb her to sleep, I am not a handicapped mom. I am a mom.
Tiffany Callow Brazil knows the feeling.
What was the day like when you discovered that you were pregnant? Do you remember it?
I was actually flabbergasted.
Like the Earls, Tiffany has cerebral palsy. Her husband Ted is also disabled.
Alrighty guys, see you later. Appreciate it. Sure.
And she is not in the least bit shy about puncturing our misconceptions, even about conception.
One of the assumptions that people make, and I have to be honest with you, I made it myself, was that I guess I thought that disabled people would have an extremely hard time having sex.
Well, it is different. It is different. It takes a lot more planning. It takes a little bit more time.
But for Tiffany Brazil and the Earls, the joy of having their own children has given birth to an agonizing debate. Are the severely disabled fit to be parents? Consider again for the moment Bill and Lee. Without the aid of friends who've been helping to care for Natalie in the Earls' East Lansing apartment, Bill and Lee are unable to bathe their child, prepare her bottles, or even change her diapers. Should Bill and Lee be forced to give up custody of Natalie? The state of Michigan is not yet sure.
We're playing a supportive role in trying to work with the family.
But you are concerned about the safety of Natalie.
Absolutely. We have a responsibility to be concerned about her.
Ed Roth is Deputy Director of Michigan's Department of Social Services. The agency has kept a close watch on Natalie since the day she was born. Privately, the state has told the Earls they must employ a full-time caregiver or risk losing their child. But Bill and Lee, who are on public assistance, can't afford it and are asking the state for help.
If Bill and Lee Earl had given birth to a disabled child, the state of Michigan would have programs and state money for that child, wouldn't it?
That's correct.
But because they gave birth to a perfectly healthy child, no money, no program.
And that illustrates the uniqueness of the situation.
Does that make any sense to you, Mr. Roth?
Well,
be honest with me now.
It is ironic, and I have some difficulty with that. But that's the fact of the matter, and that's the law we have to administer.
The sad fact here is that the state may eventually take Natalie.
We will fight it in the courts. and it will drag on and on. And all the money that the government is ready to spend on that fight could be put into preserving our family.
You're ready to fight about this. To keep Natalie, you'll go to court.
Tiffany Brazil fought to keep her children too, but lost.
What was the day like when they took David away?
If that wasn't one of the most heart-wrenching, heart-stopping days, I don't know. I think that is worse than the fate of death.
In 1987, the California Department of Social Services took custody of Tiffany's son, David. He was 3 weeks old. A year later, her second son, Jesse, was taken just days after he was born. Since then, Tiffany has only been allowed occasional visits with her children.
Why did the state want to take your children away?
Because they didn't want to deal with developing a new program, perhaps. They didn't want to deal with disabilities. They weren't willing to learn.
State officials refused to discuss Tiffany's case, but agency records show that social workers had concluded that Tiffany's disabilities left her unable to care for her children.
Big deal. It takes you 25 minutes to change a diaper. Big, wow. If life quit being on such a tight time clock, I think this world would be a lot more peaceful place.
But Tiffany, the fact of the matter is there must have been many things you just could not do.
It wasn't that I could not do these things. I wanted an extra person standing by.
Eventually, Tiffany says the state changed tactics, questioning her emotional ability to be a parent.
A psychologist during the hearing said that you may have a borderline personality disorder.
I wasn't supposed to be hysterical. We're talking about this is my child. They're taking part of my heart and soul. I'm not supposed to be a little bit upset.
In a bid to keep her children together and stay in contact with them, Tiffany finally agreed to their adoption. But once she signed the papers, the boys were placed in separate homes. David is now 5 and Jesse 4.
How often do you see your children now?
Twice a year for 2.5 hours.
Could someone like Tiffany have made a good mother?
Absolutely. We've seen it many times.
Over the past 10 years, Berkeley psychologist Megan Kirschbaum has worked with scores of disabled parents, including Tiffany Brazil. In hundreds of hours of videotape, Kirschbaum has documented how disabled parents and their children learn to adapt to each other.
Because I can support myself here by wrapping my arm, and then I can take him and set him down.
Sometimes a small innovation can solve a big problem. A crib that slides across, not down, is easier for a disabled parent to handle. And a customized changing table can help too.
Clean the baby up. Tie her down again.
Kirschbaum had never met Bill and Lee Earl. We showed her tapes of the family.
What do you see?
They're having a conversation. This is a regular mommy-baby conversation.
Have you seen parents who are as severely disabled as Bill and Lee adequately take care of a child?
Oh, sure.
And to prove the point, she showed us the Jacobsons, Neil, Denise, and David.
This is an example from the early tapes we did of Neil and Denise.
How old was David here?
He was about 3 months here.
3 months.
Though both parents have severe cerebral palsy, they've raised their son from infant to toddler to child.
This is a scene that so few Americans imagine even takes place.
Right. Right. I think this is the kind of thing I most want people to see. At the deepest level, it's the same as with any parent and baby.
The Jacobsons live in an upper-middle-class neighborhood in Oakland, California.
How about 5 kisses?
Neil is a bank vice president. Denise is a writer. And David, still happy to be along for the ride, is now 5 years old.
Does your dad play games with you?
Yeah.
What kind of?
I think he plays Candyland with me.
He does?
Yeah.
How does he do that? Does he do it while he's sitting in the wheelchair?
No, he gets out of his wheelchair.
He comes down on the ground?
Yeah.
Is he pretty good at Candyland?
Yeah.
The Jacobsons are just one of many disabled couples who for years now have been quietly going about the business of raising their children.
Okay. Yeah.
But unlike the Earls and Tiffany Brazil, they are employed. That allowed them to pay for full-time help when David was an infant. They've cut that back to 3 hours a day now. The rest of the time, they manage on their own.
I get to school. I pick him up. I take him to the playground. We go shopping.
In other words, you do everything that parents and children do together. How are your parents different than other parents, David?
They're in wheelchairs. And they don't have steady hands.
Is that the only difference that you know?
Yes.
The fact that they don't have steady hands, is that ever a problem for you?
Nah. That's never a problem.
Do you ever have a hard time understanding your parents?
Well, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Well, what happens if you don't understand? What do you do?
I just say that again.
All your life, did you want to be a daddy?
Yeah. Oh. No matter how wonderful I thought it would be, it's 1,000 times better. You want to go for a ride? Have fun. It is big business in my whole life. I don't care about my disability. I'm daddy. I'm his daddy.
If the Jacobsons have learned love is blind, the Earls still fear love might not be enough. The state continues to watch Natalie's care, so Bill and Lee have temporarily hired a young woman with her own mild cerebral palsy to help with Natalie's physical needs. Her emotional ones are still a matter between parent and child.
You're first, man.
My girl, my girl, my girl, talking about my girl, my girl.
I will be there when she falls down and scrapes her knee to kiss it and make it better. I will go to PTA meetings and help her with her homework. I will stay up late when she goes out on a date. Natalie is my daughter.
A few notes. Little Natalie is crawling now, but sadly her parents have separated. They are sharing custody and remain determined to raise her. Tiffany has co-written a book about the ordeal of losing her children. Young David Jacobson is thriving in kindergarten, while his mother Denise is finishing a book about her family.